Welcome to the first ever The Fantasy Heat podcast. We're going to be open up on Gmail and Facebook. Seated with me to my left is our literally senior analyst, Matt. What's going on, Matt?
Yes, I am senior. I am the elder.
And over to his left is our not-so-senior analyst, Colin. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
I am surrounded by Packer fans, so it's is what it is.
That's a good problem to have, sir.
It depends on if they're winning. Colin also likes Baltimore. Well, we're going to preface this with Matt is a Browns fan. And we are also joined in the center of our table with our commemorative Daryl Dixon bobblehead. Hey, what's up, Daryl?
Daryl Dixon.
All right. So we're going to get right into it. Breaking news the past couple days. Dez Bryant and Demaryius have both signed their contracts. Everybody's up in heat about it. Everybody wants to talk about it, and we don't really care. That's not what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about fantasy running backs, something that actually matters, and a lot of people are focusing on in the first round and fretting over in their fantasy drafts. Matt, what do you got to say about that? Anything?
Running backs are the biggest mystery year after year. You have guys like, we'll get into it later, but running backs. I rarely take running backs in the first round. It is what it is.
That's a unique thought. Colin, what do you think about running backs in the first?
I think it's a completely backwards thought on Matt's opinion.
Yeah.
In general, if I'm picking first, I'm going running back all the way.
And I think that's everybody's saying this year, and I completely agree. If you're not picking in the top 6, if you're picking pick 7, pick 8, I think that's where the value's really at, because the top 6 guys that are going in the drafts, they almost seem like the same person in a fantasy standpoint to some people. And you take that first pick and you get a running back. If you truly believe in Eddie Lacy, you're picking him first, and you're waiting a long, long time. And meanwhile, the guy's picking 12 or picking Calvin Johnson, Dez Bryant, back-to-back, bang, bang. And the receivers are depleted by the time you get there. But we're going to skip over that topic for right now, and we're going to go right into our first specialty segment, Just Stop. What's going to happen is we're each going to present a player and a situation, and we're going to pass around the table here, and we're going to tell each other whether we should just stop with that train of thought or if they like it. My first guy coming up here is going to be Jonathan Stewart. I'm hearing grumblings that everybody thinks Stewart's going to have a big year this year if he could stay healthy and if Cam Newton stays healthy and they utilize him. Matt?
So your just stop is Jonathan Stewart.
Jonathan Stewart. Do you think he's going to have a big year, or should I just stop?
I think he will have a big year. I plan to reach for Jonathan Stewart. He is not in my top 12, but I plan to have him on at least one of my teams this year. Colin.
I think Jonathan Stewart's going to have a solid year. I know he's very improved in staying healthy, but even if he only misses 2 games, he's a feature back now with DeAndre Williams taking his game over to Pittsburgh, where he'll be pretty much shut in. So Jonathan Stewart has the best capability to put up big numbers this year.
So only one of us are on the just stop bandwagon.
And I'll say it right now, just stop.
All right,
Jonathan, I got to get going on Jonathan Stewart real quick before we get moving on here. Jonathan Stewart in 2014 played 13 games. In 2013, played 6 games, and in 2012, played 9. In none of those seasons did he have more than 3 rushing touchdowns or 809 yards. I'm screaming from the rooftops, just stop. Get me away from Jonathan Stewart. And I'm going to pass the baton to you, Matt.
I will draft him. My just stop is Mark Ingram.
Oh.
After Trent Richardson's debacle in Cleveland, I can never root for an Alabama running back again. Colin?
Just stop barking him as well. She's just awful. He had one okay year, which happened to be last season. The guy still missed 4 games due to injury. He's completely unproven. I know everyone thinks the Saints are going to go to a run-heavy attack, trading away Kenny Stills and Jimmy Graham. But, I mean, how much do you really think Mark Ingram can produce? Just stop,
I think this is going to be on our first show and 2 players. And I think we're going to have our first unanimous decision. While I do have Mark Ingram kind of ranked mid-pack on my rankings, I'm going to scream, just stop with Mark Ingram.
My problem with Mark Ingram is he's not really good. He's not great at anything. He's okay at a lot of things, but he'll never be, in my mind, Pro Bowl.
Best case scenario, the guy steals the goal line carries and bangs it in and gets you the touchdowns. But Darren Sproles.
Yeah,
has
we'll
now
see.
been reincarnate with C.J. Spiller over there.
CJ is another topic. All right, number 12. Let's start this 12 through 1 ranking. We're going to start with Chuck.
we just talked about him here, Mark Ingram.
Mark Ingram.
What? So we're just gonna
stop.
I said he was. So I'm gonna pass the baton right over to you.
Okay, Mark Ingram is Chuck's 12. My 12 is a big reach, and I'm really going out on a limb. I think Joseph Randle from the Dallas Cowboys will be a maybe even a top 5, top 6 running back. That is my reach. He is at number 12, and I plan to reach heavily for him. He is inheriting the best offensive line in football. They're basically dropping him into a system that had one of the most prolific running years of my lifetime. How do you not take him 3rd, 4th round? Joseph Randle. Colin?
My 12 is sitting pretty at Frank Gore, the inconvenient truth for a reason.
He inconveniently got kicked out of San Francisco by Carlos Hyde.
I think he inconveniently won.
I'm disappointed in you, Matt, for a guy who picked up Ahmad Bradshaw, who was being written off last year and kind of rode him mid-season to fantasy stardom. You're going to be down on Gore. Going to Indianapolis?
Don't forget that I won the Super Bowl.
That's what I'm talking about.
I like Frank Gore. He's just not my top 12.
Fair enough. We're going to be moving on to number 11, correct? Number 11 is going to be Carlos Hyde for me, the young guy over in San Francisco.
He's a Buckeye. Can't go wrong. As said, he pretty much single-handedly took over Frank Gore's job. I plan to reach for Carlos Hyde this year. He's not in my top 12, but I will reach for him. My number 11 is Justin Forsett. I say this because, and this pains me to say this, being a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan, Justin Forsett will run all over the Browns. Those 2 games will produce 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's an excellent bonus to your season. Justin Forsett, I'm all in with him.
Well, not to steal your thunder, Matt, but Justin Forsett's also my number 11. He's a very young 29, doesn't have a lot of carries there, and he's now, even though he played pretty well last year in a running system, you now add offensive genius Mark Trestman to the mix, who's already
genius.
Well, I actually have Justin Forsett ranked a little bit higher than you guys. I have him all the way up at number 8, which is actually where we're going to end this segment today. But speaking of Mark Trestman, I'm high on this guy because nobody's going to be stealing the rock from Justin Forsett unless he does it to himself. And in Mark Trestman's offense last year, Matt Forte had 130 targets, and the year before that, 95. With Forsett's rationed, seldomly used legs until last year, catching the ball, he's still got the step. I don't care how old he is. Justin Forsett's going to be a good one this year.
I agree. Where's that?
All on board.
We're going to be jumping down to number 10, where I have the inconvenient truth, Frank Gore.
Well, we've already talked about Frank Gore. I do like Frank Gore. Not my top 12. But again, he was pretty much sent packing from San Francisco. Whenever a guy, and this will come up a lot today, whenever a guy is let go, traded, whatever the reason being, from a good team or a decent team, you wonder why they didn't like him. Why did San Francisco fall out of love with Frank Gore? I didn't hear money, contract, any of that coming up. Why do they not love him in San Francisco anymore?
Well,
what happened?
I'm a big investigator into how the Packers do things as far as draft and development, and we'll use Tramon Williams and Greg Jennings as great examples. They're maybe not necessarily done, but in order to preserve the cap and develop for the future, sometimes you just got to let those guys who have been there however long go. Whether they're good or not, they could be good somewhere else. What I'm seeing in Frank Gore that I like over in Indianapolis is the guy's a pass blocker. He's big. He's going to get you your goal line carries. And let me finish here in a second. Last year he had, I think, 11 passing targets in PPR. You might as well jump off a bridge with that many targets. Ahmad Bradshaw, on the other hand, in only 10 games, had 47 targets, averaging right about 5 targets a game.
I love Ahmad Bradshaw. At my number 10, I have Matt Forte. I am not a Matt Forte lover by any means. I do not like Chicago by any means. Never really have. Clark Griswold is a Chicago fan. I like Clark Griswold. Matt Forte, every year we try to write him off. He then comes back with just ridiculous catching numbers. PPR league, he could be top 2, top 3. Even in non-PPR, the guy's going to get you a ton of receiving yards. Matt Forte has to be in your top 12 somewhere. Colin.
I think Matt woke up this morning and took a peek at my sheet, guys. I also have Matt Forte penciled in at number 10. He, while I don't like the miles he has on his legs over there in Chicago, they've done next to absolutely nothing to get that team any help. You still have the miserable Jay Cutler leading the way. He'll get his yards and, most importantly for his value, his receptions, because Jay Cutler's all about the dink and dump now. So Matt Forte.
Are you talking about smoking Jay?
Yes, the smoking the Jay over there.
Now, will Jay Cutler stop to light a Marlboro in between handoffs?
And that will probably attribute to at least a bunch of fantasy points being deduced from Jay Cutler's season, but that's for a different segment another day.
I'm curious to see Forte's fantasy value without Trestman there. I'm not saying I don't believe in him, and I'm not saying that I do, but he's one of the guys that are kind of free-floating around my top
He's also
10 to 15 right now.
He's also running behind a much more porous offensive line. It still is very porous. A lot of glaring needs in Chicago, and
so we'll see what happens. It might change a little bit for preseason,
real
depending
quick,
on what
though,
they show us.
I'm
Go
loving
ahead.
Chuck's Frank Gore at number 10. I wish I could have gone a little higher on him too, but
I don't have Gore in my top 12. Moving on, number 9, Chuck.
LaShawn McCoy, the Buffalo Bills' new addition, the new C.J. Spiller, the guy who's going to be doing it, catching the ball. I think we're going to witness the end of Fred Jackson here this year. We say
Fred
that every
Jackson
year.
will never go away.
Yeah.
And he will be on my bench.
The guy's
on
gonna,
every team I
I
have.
think Fred Jackson's going to retire a Bill, but I think LaShawn McCoy, everybody's worried about his offensive line. Ryan, the coach, is stubborn. The guy's going to force the ball down people's throat, and when that doesn't work, he's going to exploit his exploitable offensive line, and I think throw screens right over people as they're rushing the quarterback. So I expect McCoy to have a fairly decent year coming out of that backfield.
I have LaShawn McCoy at number 9 as well. He just turned 27, so he's still young. He's definitely one of the younger on my whole top 12. Again, though, why did the Eagles not want him? When you're a guy of his talent and his young age, you trying to tell me Chip Kelly could not find a proper fit for LaShawn McCoy? There's some baggage there that I don't think we know about.
not to cut you off there. That though, Chip Kelly didn't want anybody in that entire team, so I don't think it's a LaShawn McCoy issue. He sent everybody packing.
Not to jump the wide receivers, but Macklin put up a great fantasy year last year, and bye-bye, sailed him across the ocean over there.
Yeah. Who do you got at 9, Colin?
My number 9 is LaShawn McCoy's new replacement, D. Murray.
Deemer.
This is a little low for most of you guys. He's obviously still a top first-round back, and up until this year, I was drafting DeMarco Murray as like my reach candidate every year, believing in this guy. And last year I passed, and look what happened. But the guy nearly had 500 total touches last year, 392 carries. That's a lot of miles in 1 year for a running back who has never stayed healthy. The guy missed 4 games in 2013, I believe. That he missed 2 games almost missed 2 games last year. He was very sparingly at the end there with that broken hand. While he did put up a 90-yard rushing day, I believe, he didn't score in that final game. So
Yeah, I'm a big D. Murray fan. I think it's a big FU for him to stay in the division. So for him to stay in the division, get at the Cowboys.
Oh, I think the Cowboys.
I can
games,
buy into
he's
that.
Gonna go. Yeah, he's going to go all out. My problem with DeMarco is when you see running backs in history carrying the ball as much as he did last year, they literally fall off.
He's-
fall off the proverbial cliff, fantasy wise, and
He's at a fall
you know,
off.
in
He's at a
reality.
fall off from last year. I mean, anybody realistically can't expect the season he had
And
last year.
Here's another thing too. They got the guy from San Diego, Ryan Matthews, who I'm sure
You know
is
I
gonna,
love him.
is going to eat up the
He's gonna eat up
carries.
carries.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Is Sproles still hanging out?
Sproles
over-
is still
and
hanging out in
Sproles is gonna be
Philly. Chip Kelly will utilize everybody. He's been
DeMarco
doing
is
it.
not high on my list at all. In most of the mock drafts I've been doing, he's been going somewhere around 20th, 21st overall. So that's
way too low.
That
Yeah.
really speaks
but
volume for
he'll
what
be
people
there.
think
So
of
if
this
you
guy.
believe he's got the value, he's probably going to be there for you late second, early third, depending on how many teams you got in your league.
No, early
But-
third, no way.
You don't
DeMarco
think?
will go second in every draft. Just my opinion.
Okay, we're jumping into number 8 here, and my number 8 is Justin Forsett, who we've previously discussed, and I think we're kind of at an understanding he's going to have at least a decent fantasy year this year. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, good fantasy year, and I just hate to keep beating up my beloved Cleveland Browns, but any running back in the AFC North tends to put up huge numbers against the Browns, and Justin Forsett's going to have a quick 300 yards and 4 to 5 touchdowns before the season even starts. Sorry, Cleveland. I love you, Browns, but it's a yearly thing.
A Cleveland Browns fan who will
Yeah.
not draft a Cleveland Brown fantasy player.
No, I won't. At my number 8, I have DeMarco Murray. We've already discussed him. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think being in the same division, the NFC East, he's going to try to throw a big FU to the Cowboys. I think he has something to prove. The fact that DeMarco Murray had 392 carries and still stayed healthy, he's 27. He's not quite into that old tier yet. So I'm with Murray at 8. How about you, Colin?
Sitting in nice and pretty at number 8 for me is C.J. Anderson. Now, C.J. is probably one of the bigger mysteries of all the running back classes this year. But, anybody who has to consistently game plan for quarterback Peyton Manning is going to open monster holes for C.J. Anderson.
This is near and dear to my heart. If I had somebody screaming, just stop, in my ear last year when I had that train of thought and drafted Monte Ball with the 10th overall pick. And yes, I was one of those guys last year who thought, oh, well, Monte Ball is going to carry the rock. No. Now, that being said, C.J. Anderson does have big play capability that Monte does not. But last year kind of burned me on that train of thought just a little bit.
See, I don't necessarily think I have C.J. Anderson. We will talk in a minute, a little ahead of you guys maybe, at least Colin. My problem with C.J. Anderson is a problem I have with many NFL players. How did he ride the bench behind other guys, and then all of a sudden now he's a superstar? All these scouts and coaches and assistants had him sitting behind Ronnie Hillman, and now all of a sudden he's a superstar. I just don't get it.
I think if you have a quick step and you plug into that offense, you have a potential. But if you're talking keeper, and we're going to kind of jump to a keeper here real quick, how long does Peyton have left? And once he leaves, does that slam the door in CJ's face fantasy-wise?
Which also is a potential possibility. But as for a standard league this year, guys, I think C.J. Anderson is going to be poised for a good year.
He's a bad pick, but I won't be reaching.
I won't reach for CJ, but I will definitely put him on my team in the first round if he's there.
And that'll segue us into our next segment. Does he have the chops? This segment, we're going to discuss running backs who are either young, up and coming, placed into a new and expected role to carry the team, contribute more to their team, and we're going to tell whether they have the chops to do it. The guy I'm going to bring up is Andre Ellington over in Arizona. 2013, he came out of nowhere, it seemed like. The guy was catching the ball. He was scoring touchdowns. He put up big fantasy points for me because I picked him up off the wire. I was high on Ellington. Picked him up again in 14, and he sputtered. I guess he was fighting a ligament injury in his foot for most of the season. They babied him. He didn't carry the ball as much as he was supposed to. He wasn't as dynamic as he could have been. This year, he's healthy. He's coming back. He's the starter. I'm expecting him to put up numbers. I think he's got the chops. What do you think, Matt?
No, I do not think he has the chops. I will not be drafting Ellington or any Cardinal in this draft, Colin.
Not anywhere remotely does this man have any chops at all.
So, Colin, where would you take him then in the draft? He's definitely a top 12 rounder. Where would you take him?
Let me say this first. In most of the mock drafts I've done, this guy's going anywhere from 45th to 55th overall.
which is fourth.
Yeah,
fifth.
fourth.
That's exactly about it for me. That's my ballpark for him. He's outside my
I think if you draft him as an RB2, I think he's got the potential to surprise. I think he could be the guy.
I think in a deep league with an RB2, he has okay value, but I don't think he has the chops by any means. He's outside my top 20 of
No,
all
he
running
is
backs.
their number one
wow.
guy, and that's what we're talking about. Does he have the chops to be the Cardinals' number one guy?
And I do not think he does.
I do not either.
If somebody else stepped in, they would take that
We are
role.
low on Ellington at this
Next,
table. Okay.
my does he got the chops is Carlos Hyde. Being from Ohio, big Buckeye fan, I want the best for Carlos Hyde. Basically, you could say he had a big part in pushing Frank Gore out of town. So does Carlos Hyde, being that he's 23, soon to be 24, does he have the chops to carry a pretty lackluster offense? Chuck.
He's got the hairdo. He's got the chops. The guy's got the quick step. He's got the boost. I don't really care about what they're talking about their offensive line right now. They're going to be moving to a run-heavy offense with their new offensive coordinator. Carlos has got the deal.
I also believe Carlos has the chops. This is a team that's been inactively, trying to get rid of Colin Kaepernick and move him on to a different team. This offense is going to have a big focal point around Carlos Hyde this year. The man definitely has the chops.
That's 3-0. That's a 100%.
Unanimous for him. Okay, go ahead, Colin.
My man for does he have the chops is LeGarrette Blount.
He narrowly missed my chops. I'm loving LeGarrette because he's kind of glanced over. He was back up to Bell last year. He got traded towards the end of the season over to the Patriots, and the guy's a bruiser. The Patriots used him. I know in the game I watched against the Packers, the guy was running the ball. It felt like 10 yards per carry. He's a monster. He's going to get the touches, especially with Brady being out at the beginning of the season. I'm seeing something good from him early.
Remember, with Shane Vereen now
And Shane Vereen's
playing for the Giants and Stephen Ridley over for the Jets, there is nobody. I mean, you could have a Jonas Gray. Granted, as long as LeGarrette Blount can wake up to his alarm clock on time.
Did you hear that bell?
What is the bell?
That's the bell cow coming.
LeGarrette Blount, I'm very torn on. 3 questions. First off, at the beginning of last season, they were saying that he and Bell were going to have equal duties. So Pittsburgh, at least told us last year at the beginning of the season, he was possibly their number one guy, and then they let him go for nothing, right? He didn't get traded or anything. They just let him go.
Well,
What do the scouts in Pittsburgh know that we 3 doofuses don't know?
I don't think they know anything we don't know, to be honest with you. Le'Veon Bell really broke out, and they decided to roll the train with Le'Veon Bell. I mean, they kept hot, and Mike Tomlin's the kind of guy that just does what he wants.
They could have kept LeGarrette for nothing.
I think
Garrett Blount had a problem with not being that feature back. He walked off the field during a game.
Okay.
He
You know-
walked off the field and said he wanted out. They didn't really ship him out. He just refused to not play anywhere where he wouldn't get any playing time.
I definitely think Blount has one of those
I think actually we have to
personalities.
call him LeGarrette Blount after his arrest.
That's exactly what I was going at. I think the Steelers realize that Bell's their star, and if he's going to be riding around at night getting arrested with Blount influencing, he was a negative influence on him off the field. I think that'd be more than enough reason to get rid of him. And I think we all realize that the Patriots don't have any sense of morals, and they'll put him to good use.
Yes, they will. So what's our consensus? I think he does have the chops.
He's got the chops.
He's got the chops.
3-0. Good.
All right, guys, we're going to take a break for right now, and we'll be right back. All right, and we're back here on the Fantasy Heat. Just remember to visit us at Facebook at the Fantasy Heat and Gmail, thefantasyheat@gmail.com. We're going to jump back into some rankings here. At number 7, I have Lamar Miller down in Miami.
Lamar Miller, I will go on record as saying I will never draft this guy.
Colin.
That's laughable. That's like a second-degree misdemeanor drafting this guy anywhere near the top 12.
I do like Lamar Miller. I just won't draft him where he's going in all the mock drafts. That's all.
Okay, well, here, I'll bring up this point. The guy we live in Florida. It's hot. We know how hot. I don't even want to work outside. This guy plays in Florida. 2013, 16 games. 2014, 16 games. The guy, Michael Fabiano, sold him on me in 2013. I took him. The guy flopped. I was well off the Lamar Miller bandwagon. 14, I avoided him, and he finished the second half of the season strong. He was putting up points. He was putting up yards. He was toting a rock, averaging 5.1 yards per carry. Had 52 targets out of that offense, 275 receiving yards. I think this year he only improves.
It's not that I don't like him. I just always feel like he's in danger of not getting the job. I don't know why I feel that way.
I feel exactly the same. I feel like the guy's just like one wrong tackle away from losing his starting job forever, and somebody else just bounces in.
I mean, he's a young guy. It's
I
not.
don't think so, because Miami, I think, builds up a lot of hype around him. And if they start using Tannehill more in their read option, I think that kind of opens up some more for Miller on down the road.
Well, here's a little stat for all you guys. Right before the end of the season, I believe, like, one of his last 10 carries, he busted out a 97-yarder, which was really actually impressive, but
Stat patter.
not unheard of for his 4.4 speed. But what is staggering, it was the only time that he's ran for over 50 yards in his entire career, and it was only the sixth time he went for over 30 years. Now you take a guy like Alfred Morris, who has over 9 career rushes at 30 yards, and he's just a big bruiser straight downfield. Nowhere near the athletic ability of Lamar
I'll
Miller.
also bring this up. He finished 9th in scoring for fantasy running backs last year. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Matt.
but didn't he start the season almost non-existent?
He did.
All right.
Yep.
So even Miami just 12 months ago did not have faith in him. But hey, we'll see. I will draft
I was
Lamar
one
Miller.
of those people. Yeah,
I will draft Lamar Miller, just not as early as everybody else wants to. My number 7 is C.J. Anderson. We have discussed him, I believe, earlier.
Yeah.
I'll say again, my only problem with C.J. Anderson, a ton of scouts and coaches left him sit the bench last year at the beginning behind Hillman and, of course, Chuck's favorite, Monte Ball. And now all of a sudden, C.J. Anderson, I saw C.J. Anderson in a keeper league mock draft go number 1. Very true.
Nah, I'm going to pass on that one. Colin?
I do like C.J. Anderson, but if I ever saw anybody take him number 1 over on a keeper league, I'd lose my mind.
I
Just
saw
for the
that
record.
just last week. The
well,
guy's young.
That person's out of his mind.
I agree, but I have him at 7. I would take him number 7. Who do you got at 7? Colin.
I have the man, LaShawn McCoy, out there in Buffalo. I think he'll do good things in Rex Ryan's offense. You don't really have to worry about cold weather being a factor with him. He played in Philadelphia. It snows there. Not quite as bad as Buffalo, but there's a lot of cold weather. He can play through it. He does have a porous offensive line, but Ryan's really good at maximizing all the potential on that front line. So he'll mix and match, make them matchups happen for LaShawn McCoy to get some good yards this year.
I agree. I previously made my comments about him.
Yeah, me too. I had him at number 9. I think LaShawn McCoy will either be a top 3 running back or completely out of the top 12. Big mystery. Buffalo can get negative
Controversy.
degrees, which typically means run, at least. So we'll see.
All right. My number 6, I think I kind of was peeking over the sheets there. I have Arian Foster.
I love Arian Foster. Every year we try to write him off, and he comes back strong. I don't know why he is dipping in the mock drafts this year. He's 28, soon to be 29. I don't know. I would draft Arian Foster top 10 without even thinking about it.
I also have Arian Foster sitting nice and keen at number 6. I love Arian Foster. The guy's done nothing but produce when he's healthy. He's only had one major injury-plagued season. That's because he had the sports hernia surgery. He was banged up last year a few times, but not really because of hamstrings or anything like that. So I don't expect that to be much of a problem this year. He might miss a game, but I'd draft Arian Foster even top 5 if you're picking mid in your drafts.
Yeah, me too. And he's, he has a lot of opportunity. I have Marshawn Lynch.
I mean, hey, real quick, who's
number
throwing
6?
who's throwing the ball over there in Houston again?
Yeah.
Anybody know?
My Uncle
Nobody
Dave.
knows.
I think my Uncle Dave. I have Marshawn Lynch, number 6. Ever since he left Buffalo, we all want to write this guy off. I mean, he's 29. For whatever reason, Buffalo couldn't make it happen for him, and now he is just a superstar. I would take Marshawn Lynch as an RB1 without even thinking. Number 6.
I have him ranked at number 3. I agree.
Cool. Chuck, number 5.
Let's see here. Ooh. I have Bell, the 23-year-old, ranked at number 5, even though he's going to potentially be missing 4 games with the bye week. That's a proportion of your season.
Wow, Le'Veon Bell. Colin, what do you think about Le'Veon Bell at number 5?
He is also penciled at number 5 on my board, man.
Oh, wow.
It's just, I think he has all the upside for a long-term back. He shaved a lot of weight last year, got a lot more athletic, so that really helped, as you can tell by the season he had. But I will say this. If you pick later in your draft in a standard 10-12 team league, Le'Veon Bell you definitely take. But as far as him missing 3 games, if you want to compete right away, he's not the guy you should reach for this year, unfortunately. Unless you're keen in your ability to draft, then I wouldn't touch him in the top 4 picks. So that's why I have him at 5.
Is that because of the suspension?
That is very because of much so the suspension.
I think without the suspension, he's easily a number 1 or 2 back. The PPR,
completely agreed.
if you're looking
PPR,
at
he's
PPR,
number 1.
105 targets. The only person who rivaled that was Matt Forte, and I don't think that's going to happen again. The dude's athletic. He's got skill. And moving on. Who you got, Matt?
Number 5, Jamal Charles. I'm not even sure I like this guy. I've never had him on one of my teams because he seems to always go super high. Don't have faith in the Kansas City offense, but yet every year, I think over the last 4 years, Jamal Charles has been number 1 in fantasy. So, I mean, how do you not take this guy top 5? For all the mileage he has, he's only 28. I hate to say only 28, but all the mileage and all the times we've said his name, you would think the guy was much older than that. Jamal Charles, number 5. Colin.
I like your thought on Jamal Charles. Just add in real quick. And I like how you say you've never had the guy, so you don't really know. I had him last year in the league, and I ended up being the champion. So I never understood either until last year. And last year he got banged up a little bit. But as for number 5, I also have Le'Veon Bell, as does Chuck, penciled in. I think we've said all we need to say about Bell. The only reason he's at 5 is due to his suspension. So if he wasn't suspended for the first 4 games of this year, he'd be a 1-2 pick easy.
Jumping back to Charles, he had his high ankle sprain in week 2, missed a game, still finished 7th in fantasy points. I think that's a safe pick in the first round. He hasn't carried the ball 300 times rushing wise. He sees his targets. 2012 he saw 104 targets over there. 2013 60 targets, and in 2014 he saw 88 targets out of the backfield. He's going to put up points again. I don't have any questions about him.
Absolutely. And one more thing, being that Alex Smith will never be a prolific passer, you know that Charles is going to get his his usual 250, 300 carries.
Jamal's the only guy he could reach with his arm.
Absolutely.
Isn't that
300 carries is a bit much, but Charles will get 250 carries this year.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, he's still – they're keeping him fresh. He doesn't carry the ball as much as maybe he should, being the focal point of that offense.
They really dialed back his touches a lot last year, too, towards the end because he was banged up. So that'll probably keep him a little fresher for this year.
But, again, I won't draft him because he will go top 5, and I just won't I won't draft him there. But, oh, well.
All right, Colin, you already mentioned your number 5, correct?
I did.
My number 4, Adrian Peterson, 30 years old.
AP, the first AP reference. I thought one of you would have him already. Number 4, AP. How come? We have no stats from last year to go on, so.
I have confidence he's going to come out. Maybe he has a chip on his shoulder about the way things went down. He'll put up points. I'm not worried about that. The guy scores double-digit touchdowns every year. He doesn't really miss games unless he gets suspended.
Right.
But he's a safe pick at number 4. He's one of those guys. Once you get up this high in the rankings, you can pretty much take him, and as long as they don't have a catastrophic injury, they'll carry you through the year. He's a safe pick.
No, AP is safe. The Browns could have drafted him. Instead, we took Joe Thomas, which was fine. But AP, he is a freak, and I know that term gets overused, but just look at the guy. He is an absolute freak. It's crazy.
I mentioned it earlier, the eye test. People fall off him. He's one of those guys.
Got AP at 4. My 4 is Arian Foster. He's 28, soon to be 29. He will be 29 when the season kicks off. We've already talked about Arian Foster, I believe, quite a bit. Nothing more to say about him. you're foolish to leave him sit there past 5 or 6. I think.
Quick question: does anybody else enjoy seeing him bow to the crowd after a touchdown as much as I do?
Oh, I love it. No, and also to Arian Foster, I've never seen him pop up in the news. I mean, outside of him shooting the MRI or whatever that picture was he put on social media of his bruised leg. Outside of that, he's not out beating up girlfriends. He's not hanging out in strip joints till 3 in the morning. He's not smoking weed with LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell. He just seems like a fairly clean guy, but maybe I'm wrong on that too. Don't know.
Do you get bonus points for doing that stuff?
Well, it seems to be. So Foster at 4. Who you got at 4?
4. Skittles. Mr.
Skittles!
Marshawn Lynch himself.
All right.
Okay, yeah, see, we're starting to get to the point in the rankings up here where.
Do you guys remember last year when Marshawn fell considerably in our draft?
Oh yeah,
I think I could have had him at 10 or 12 last year, and I skipped on him.
depends on if you have a group of guys who think he's old and going to break down and jump off a year early, or if you have guys who are obsessed with him. It depends on where he goes.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, he's one carry shy of being a legend. That one carry would be at the end of the last Super Bowl. We all saw that coming.
We're going to jump off the rankings here before we do our top 3, and we're going to do our last segment, Sweet Action.
Sweet
action.
Where you tell us where you have a guy that's further down your list.
Hey, I must
and that's
first
your
say,
guy.
I must first say Sweet Action is a shout out to Justin Sly. Sweet Action. Sweet Action is basically a guy who you believe in wholeheartedly, but for whatever reason is not in your top 12.
Exactly, and I'm going to start off with C.J. Spiller. C.J. Spiller's my guy, and I'm going to tell you why. He's got the skill. I remember watching a game with him in 2013. He was on my fantasy team, and no sooner did I sit down on the couch and we turned on this Bills game. Don't really like the Bills, but we're watching them. I'd seen CJ play before. He's got skills. And I remember looking to the person next to me and said, watch this guy throughout the game. He's going to blow up. That play, he took the ball to the house 55 yards, I believe, right up the gut. Bang.
Okay, that's
Did
a gut.
it to him.
That's a
Did
gut.
it to him.
A gut
Now,
comment.
here's what I'm going to say. He let us all down last year, but now he's.
Did he or did the Bills?
You know, it's hard.
That's hard
Maybe,
to say.
I think maybe they both contributed to it. But the biggest thing I love about Spiller is, and I'm going to use Sproles for an example here. When Sproles played for New Orleans in 2011 through 2013, in 11 he saw 111 targets out of the backfield. In 2012 he saw 104 targets. And in 13 he saw 89 targets. Spiller's one of those guys you want catching the ball and running with it in open space. And Colin knows me. For as much love as Drew Brees gets for putting up all his points, I'll be the first person to tell you I'm not on the Drew Brees fanboy board, because unless his players are running wide open down the field or he's tossing up a jump ball to Jimmy Graham, he's not threading a needle, and he's looking for his running backs in a panic to throw them the ball.
It's a
And I
dink
think
and dump life in New Orleans.
it is, and it's going to benefit C.J. Spiller to no end. He's my sweet action.
I am on the C.J. Spiller bandwagon this year, as long as Ingram doesn't get too much of a workload. My sweet action, I've been screaming this guy's name for 2 years. Ryan Matthews. Now, I'm not saying he is sweet action as a number one running back. I am just saying wherever you pick him up in the draft, he will absolutely be a value. Obviously not last year, although I carried him last year the entire season and never got anything. The year before, I ran him at flex for basically 16 straight games, and he always had a minimum of 12 to 13 points and never more than 19 or 20. If your flex can guarantee you 15, 16 every single game, how is that not sweet action, Colin?
I like the Ryan Matthews comment. We'll just dial in there. I can agree with that.
He'll get 15 carries and he'll get 80 yards, and he might get a touchdown every single game that he plays. At least his past on my fantasy teams.
Everything's possible in the Chip Kelly offense. My sweet action is C.J. Spiller.
Oh, no.
Yep. Unfortunately, we both have C.J. Spiller.
So you both will be reaching for him this year. That's cool.
You know what? Yeah, I'll reach for CJ.
I'd reach for
You know
C.J.
what?
too.
Here's my. I don't know. I'm going to use this term.
I gave up on drafting DeMarco right when I had a gut feeling he was going to break out all the time. Last year I didn't. I gave up on him. Look what happens. So I refuse to give up on CJ if I can pick him up in the 5th round and somebody else won't.
Here's my we'll call it a ludicrous prediction. Everybody's on the Mark Ingram bandwagon after the way he finished the year last year. I say Spiller takes over that starting job by midseason. That's my ludicrous.
Completely possible.
Hey, it's completely possible. CJ's young. I mean,
Mark Ingram, stone hands, has had toe injuries in his career, missed 4 games last year.
yeah, the funny thing is, not to get too off topic, but it seems like toes and feet are the hardest things to come back from. I'm no doctor, but
ligaments keep popping up. Ligaments, toe ligaments. AJ Green had one last year. Andre Ellington had an issue with the ligament in his foot.
Julio Jones, that foot bug,
And
right?
unless you're off of it completely, it's not going to heal. They tell you, they throw up their smoke screen throughout the season. We rested him in practice. He'll play this week. They're not going to be the same. They're not going to have the push off.
Another thing about Mark Ingram, this is a guy you watch on tape. He doesn't do anything great that pops out to you. He's more of a veering runner. He doesn't cut hard. He doesn't get yards after contact very much. He will bowl over a couple guys from time to time.
So he's Brandon Jacobs.
Yeah, exactly. Unless he has the conviction to run, he's not going to run. But CJ Spiller has the elusiveness to make everybody miss.
Hey, we will see on CJ.
CJ is the sweet action.
Okay.
So instead of here, we're going to kind of deviate here. Instead of doing our linear countdown, for our top 3, what we're going to do is I'm going to say you have the number 1 overall pick in your draft. What running back do you take? I take Eddie Lacy. Hands down.
Number
Matt?
1 overall, Eddie Lacy.
No.
Yeah, I have never had the number 1 pick in the history of my life. I've never had to sit and think about it.
That's because it's the death pick.
It's the death pick. So we're skipping 2 and 3.
The way I'm looking at this right now is everybody's top 3 are going to be the same people, just in a different
It's
order.
all-
and
yeah,
they're
it's-
almost
yeah.
a dead heap.
Well,
so
it's
I
all
figured we kind of
opinionated.
mix it up here and say, if you had the choice,
I am
who do you
going
take?
to. Yeah, I'm going to right now, and I'm going to probably get a lot of scoffs. I take Le'Veon Bell 1. I don't care. I don't care about. Here's why.
My
Number
man.
1. I've said this over and over. I love Cleveland to death, but. And I'm not even sure on the schedule now. I should have looked when they play Cleveland. Le'Veon Bell is going to have 200 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Browns this year. It's guaranteed. He might also have his 3-game suspension reduced. There's been talk of that. Not to mention, your backup running back is still going to get you 15. So if Le'Veon gets you 21, 22, and your backup running back for him gets you 15, 16, maybe more, if you stream somebody those 3 weeks, I don't know how you don't take Le'Veon Bell. He's like the new Matt Forte because he's 23 years old, but fresh, young, and catches the heck out of the ball. I don't know. Le'Veon Bell, number 1, with suspension. Colin.
Everything in my gut wants to tell me Eddie Lacy because I'm a Packers fan, so I'm a little biased in that direction. But if you take biasm out of the conversation completely, I'd be completely happy taking Adrian Peterson, number 1 overall.
I have him 3, though he might be 2.
I have Adrian Peterson listed at 2, only for the sheer fact that we happen to play in a deep league. It's PPR. Eddie Lacy is my number 1 because of the age factor, but if there was no age factor for your Stinner leagues, I'm all in Adrian Peterson. Guy's going to have a monster year.
I got one thing about Eddie Lacy. Actually, 2 things. Eddie Lacy just turned 25, so he's young. He also plays on a high-powered offense, and he'll be at the goal line 4 or 5 times a game. Here's my one and only one problem about Eddie Lacy. If he's so good, why did he stink it up the first handful of games last year?
Ooh.
Matt, I can answer that.
Let me go back and say our commissioner actually traded Ronnie Hillman even up for Eddie Lacy. That is how low of a value Eddie Lacy had last year.
By hook or by crook.
So what's up with Eddie Lacy? Why he started so Bell didn't? Well, I shouldn't say that, but Eddie Lacy started so slow that it's a big mystery on that. On why?
Eddie Lacy also played 3 out of 4 games against the top 5 rushing defenses last year. He played in Detroit
that's
against
probably why,
Detroit.
yep.
He played in Seattle against Seattle.
And that,
So
the
that's a
offense to begin last year was in disarray.
they
If
were
you'll remember,
stagnant.
Matt, relax.
Stagnant.
Just relax.
Do we all have Bell Lacy? Well, no. I have Bell, Lacey, and AP top 3, and I really couldn't tell you which one of those 3 I would care to
Flip
get.
a three-sided coin. I
So
mean,
who do you have top 3?
Eddie Lacy, Charles, and Lynch.
Charles and Lynch.
And I had Eddie Lacy, Adrian Peterson, and Charles.
All right, so a little different.
All right, that's going to be concluding our show
Yes,
here. The first ever Fantasy Heat.
The first ever.
Please visit us at Facebook and thefantasyheat@gmail.com. Send us your questions if you have any for us. We'll be happy to answer them. Like, subscribe, comment, and we're going to leave our links down in the description. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks, guys.